You're good at the blurb.
Yes, so today is the 2nd of May 2013. We're here at the School of Architecture interviewing Lindy Wissler, or Lindy Crofts, and interviewing you is Robert Riddel, Deborah Plaat, and Janina, Gosseye. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Do you want to start?
First question. What architecture qualifications did you gain and from which institution?
Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Queensland in 1972.
72. And you can remember the people who were teaching at that time, and are any of them ones that stick in your memory that you
Oh, they all do. I think I would single out Peter O'Gorman. Well, we started with Bill Carr and Ian Cinnamon, who were very influential.
Useful?
Yes. I mean, it was very wide-ranging course. It was into opening your mind, and so as it went along, it became a little bit more focused, and people were teaching us more about construction and structural mechanics and things like that. But in the beginning, it was very much a mind-opening exercise.
Did it work? Was your mind open?
Oh, it was pretty open before, but yes, I think it's stood us in good stead through life.
And what were the courses like?
Well, you went from, you weren't sticking to a conventional way of approaching things. You were supposed to start from first principles, do a sort of functional analysis, but not think about the names that things were traditionally given, but just start from the beginning and gradually come up with something that you thought was creative.
But you were a bit of ahead of it because your father was an architect and you knew what went on. So that must have prepared you.
Yeah, that did. I mean, that's why I did it, because I knew what it was about. I knew it was interesting, and I had a bit of familiarity with it. And I also liked the idea that it was long. I thought, that's 6 years, I don't have to think about doing something else.
So the group of people that you studied with, any of those you consider to be significant in the light of what they later did? I mean,
oh well, yes, of course. Rex was in my year. Rex Addison. Russell Hall was in my year. Don Watson was in the year ahead, and Richard Allen. The year behind me was John Mainwaring. There were less prominent people in my year that I think were talented, like Bill Berry. I think he's working around Noosa, but he was a talented person, but pretty low key. Margaret West was talented.
So we're also very interested in sort of documenting and finding women architects that were studying at that time and later practicing. Can you remember any other of the women students in your year? Or?
Yes, we had 5 in our year out of the 50, and that was a big year. Because the year before, I think there were 2, Christine Metcalf and Sue Fain. And the year after me, there was just Carol Campbell-Brown. But in my year, well, there was Margaret and Lynn Salmon and Lecky Ord and Linda Davey and me. Linda Davey dropped out. Lecky went on and was Lord Mayor of Melbourne or something.
And can you say something, because we've heard some odd stories about the teaching methods of Bill Carr.
Oh yeah.
That I would like to check if those are actually true.
He would say confrontational things like, your parents are wrong. And I thought, well, no, my parents aren't wrong. And the things that you take home and tell your parents and they'd be horrified. But we could absorb that for what it was worth. It just meant rethink things and agree or not agree. And he'd do radical things like take us out into the sun. I mean, we can survive that. And I can remember one occasion, it was me and someone else, Harvey Russell, I think. We went to his place and he hypnotised us. So that was a bit weird, but
Was there a purpose for this?
Yes.
I don't know. I think it was, I mean, we were quite nervous about it, and I think just having survived it was something.
You said you graduated in 1972. That's the year that Art Week took place. Do you remember that? Were you still?
I remember that, yes, vaguely. But I wasn't here much because I actually finished the year before, but that 72 was the year I graduated.
Mm.
So I wasn't on campus for that. What happened, I do remember, it was something scandalous.
Yes, apparently so. Yes, but and the student conference that happened in '67. Do you remember much of?
Well, I do, but I got it wrong. I thought Buckminster Fuller was here. But,
Tony Gwilliam.
Tony Gwilliam, yes, yes, I remember that.
And there were others. There was somebody else. I think Paul Ritter was supposed to come and
Yes.
didn't.
Mm.
And
I know people were building tensegrity domes and things all over the Great Court.
yeah, well, that was, I think, to do with Tony Gwilliam's
Mm.
influence because
Mm.
he was very into that.
Mm.
But John Dalton and Jim Birrell were certainly part of it,
Mm.
and I think one of those was called in to substitute for somebody who didn't turn up. But I can't remember their names. But I guess there were the people who organised that conference would have been John Davis and Bill Heather and
Mm.
Jack Kershaw and sort of that group of people that sort of ran the student body at that time. But I mean, were you at the event at West End? I don't think I
The Chook
was.
thing?
The Chook thing.
I think I was, yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about? Do you
Oh, well, it was, the chook was swung around, I think, on the stage.
But for an art event or
Kind of a review thing. No, yes, a performance.
performance art,
Mm.
yes.
Mm.
And but there must have been other things that were happening before that.
Yeah, there were other items, yeah.
So it was a proper sort of review show,
thing, yeah.
and it wasn't just Queensland people who were doing it. It was from all over Australia.
I can't remember, really.
So were you doing something?
I don't think so. I don't remember being on stage in that place.
Mm.
No.
But you were on stage many other times
Mm.
at the Avalon.
Yes, and at the Chanel. Those two places, I think. Only.
So do you remember how many times you were in events there? I mean,
Well,
was a
there was a
review.
review. The first review was when I was in first year, and I was not in that. I went with my parents to Sydney or something at the time. Is that right? I can't remember. Maybe. Anyway, I think I was in most of them. Or maybe about 5 of them.
and I mean the people who were behind those were
That was wrong
interested.
about what I just said about going to that was a convention in Melbourne that I didn't go to because they didn't want me to and they took me somewhere else. So that wasn't right.
Okay. And what do you remember of the student reviews? How were they set up and how were you involved? What was the role you played in them? Or
I did a lot of standing still.
You're good at that.
Yes. You said a few lines, did a bit of a movement, and there weren't many girls. That was the thing, you know, and you more or less had to be in it, and it was fun. Mm.
But the idea, it was not specifically about architecture, it was about...
Well, people wrote different skits and things. I think people did write some about architecture. I think somebody wrote something about a Martyr Prize home and people popped out of windows or something. I wasn't in that one. But no, it wasn't specifically about architecture. It was about growing up, I think, you know.
Well, certainly it achieved that. I mean, people did grow up and they decided, quite a few of them, not to do architecture.
That's right.
But you didn't. I mean, Or did you?
I finished it, but I didn't really do it to a great extent after that. Well, I had several jobs after I graduated, but I kept drifting into other things, I think. So I was at Peddlethorpe and Harvey for 6 months, and then I left there to make a film, which was quite long term. I mean, I didn't make it, I was helping. And I worked for my father for 6 months after that, and then I left that to work at the National Trust, which is something Bob Martin asked me to come into, and that was good. That was a townscape study of Ipswich, and it stood me in good stead from then on.
So this is when you were still studying here?
No, this was in
after graduation?
1975, 76, that sort of time, so it's beyond your...
Because as you had employment when you were in your last years here,
at Conrad and Gargett. Yeah.
all that Conrad and Gargett.
Well, there was an indenture system that there was a lot of objection to, but firms were tired of students coming and learning a bit and then leaving and going somewhere else before they actually contributed, and so they brought in this scheme that we'll teach you, but you've got to stay with us the whole time and contribute.
So when was that brought in? I didn't know about that.
It was about the time, it must have been about 68, sometime like that. There was a big meeting out here, and my father came out with some other people and stood up there as a panel and tried to argue for this indenture system, and there was student objection.
So what did you think?
I probably, being a bit of a free spirit, was against it, but I didn't object. You know.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was most beneficial to a student to move around and see a whole range of things that were going on.
They're just that the employers got sick of it.
Yeah. Well, they probably got sick of me doing that.
Sorry.
No,
I was going to say I did stay at Conrad and Gargett for the whole of that time.
So
That's
how
3
long was
years.
that?
3 years.
Yeah.
And what were the projects that you worked on? Do you remember?
A lot of just basic working drawings, hospital floor plans and details, SGIO building details I worked on a long time. It's now the Suncorp building. House extension I did with Lou Haley. It was good. I mean, people would say to me, how's the factory? And I think it's nothing like a factory. It's the most nurturing, sort of warm place you could be, I think. Wasn't wildly exciting, but, you know, it was good.
Why do you say it was nurturing?
Well, they cared for you. They were interested in how you were learning, and they were just warm sort of people.
So they sort of directed you to sort of different projects?
Yeah,
or
I suppose.
gave you a wide-ranging...
Well, I don't know about that, but there was some variety.
But you worked under Lou Haley always, or
No, they moved around.
And who were the other people that were around that you worked with at Conrad and Gargett at the time?
Well, Bob was there, but I don't think I worked with you.
I would have left pretty soon, I think, after we got there.
Yeah, Gabriel Poole was there, and Bob Collin was there.
And Rex?
He was there later, yeah.
Rob Akers?
Who?
Rob Akers?
Oh, Rob Akers, yes.
He went off to Parliament after that.
I think he's dead now, isn't
Is he?
I'm not sure.
Did you undertake any other tertiary study?
Not in that time period. Since then I did.
When did you do that?
I did a graduate diploma in landscape architecture in 77, started it. And I did that fairly slowly because I had some children and went to Townsville for a couple of years, and so I think it was the mid-80s before I got that qualification.
Was that at QIT?
QIT.
And who was teaching that?
George Williams was in charge of it. Malcolm Bunsley was there. Was Barbara Conrad doing anything? Oh, certainly Beth Wilson was.
So we're probably jumping ahead by asking you that question, but you spent 3 years at Conrad and Garget that was indentured. Then you went
to London.
Yeah. And you were there for how long?
2 years.
And why did you go to London? What was the...
Everybody went to London.
Good answer. Now they go to New York.
Yes, that's right.
And you worked in London as an architect as well?
Yes, I think it was called architectural assistant.
In which office did you work in?
Tribe and Wakeham.
Tribe and Wakeham.
Try to wake them.
Did you work on any interesting projects while you were there? Perhaps not after that name.
Again, I found it pleasant. What did I do? I would building society conversions. There was the Department of Environment was actually doing army housing sort of things. I don't know why it's called Department of Environment, but some project administration was mainly what I did on that. I don't know, because I worked there in 2 bursts, I think a 4-month and an 8-month, or vice versa, in the 2-year period. So I wasn't there the whole time.
Where else did you?
I didn't work.
You didn't work, right?
No.
So did you travel throughout Europe at that time as well?
Mm-hmm.
Did you look at architecture or visit buildings or?
Yes.
Any highlights that you'd like to talk about?
Actually, I travelled with Bob, and remember you had a vision in Ronchamp.
Oh, now it's getting interesting.
I had forgotten that.
That was one expedition anyway, and we certainly did look at that. I don't think we looked at much other architecture, except Greek villages and things.
Delphi, I remember.
Delphi, yes, yes, that's right.
Okay.
But there weren't any architects that you particularly sought out. Were those architects, like Le Corbusier, was that taught at UQ at the time? Was that somebody you were looking at?
We did know about it, yes.
Yeah.
And
were there other, like Aalto has been mentioned in other interviews?
Aalto, yeah, he was a big name.
But you didn't.
We didn't
go up to.
We didn't go up there, no.
But had you been to Milan before?
Before, yes, we went to Milan, Bob.
Didn't we?
Yeah. We did. Just very briefly. I just remember the cathedral, and I think we might have been there one day or something. But this time I was there 4 days, and yeah, it was good. We went out a bit this time to the northwest, and there's a new residential development. Libeskind and Zaha Hadid at all. It's a bit weird, but yes, we did look up these things.
Now, I suppose it's going a little bit back to the question Janina just asked. Did you cover this sort of material in your architectural course at the time? Did you have history classes?
We did have history classes. Yes.
And what did it focus on?
Well, it did start right back with the Egyptians.
Okay,
yeah.
so did the whole world history from...
And who was teaching?
What was it, Ian Zimmerman? I think it might have been.
You didn't have Professor Cummings?
I did have Professor Cummings, yes.
Did he teach history?
I don't know that he did. We had Carl Langer for town planning, and he went into sort of medieval squares and how irregular was good and things like that.
Was he a good teacher?
Carl Langer. He had an aura.
Well, he'd certainly done a lot before he came here.
I think he was good about that sort of thing because he knew about it and he had a good way of interpreting it.
Were you aware of what he was doing here in his practice? I mean, the buildings
Lutheran
that he did?
churches and things. Was he doing?
Well, he did St. Peter's school work.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware of that particularly until Eric Parrots took it on later, didn't he?
So he didn't discuss his own work?
No, not at all.
Within the context of his teaching?
No, it wasn't contemporary what he was teaching.
But I mean, in terms of Lennon's Hotel, for instance, in
yeah.
George Street, did you know that was him? And the main roads department building?
I knew the
Spring
main
Hill?
roads department building was, yes, but he wasn't talking about it.
But I mean, that was part of the aura that he had this
Oh no, I think
practice.
the aura was, Viennese and
European.
Gertie and everything.
So did you know Gertie?
Oh, not personally. She didn't know people, I don't think. Pretended. She just sort of went blank.
Well, if she didn't know you, you're in trouble.
At the period that you were studying, it seems like more attention was being paid to the local building tradition in Queensland. Was anybody that was teaching at UQ looking at that, or fellow students looking at that, or do you remember?
I think yes. I think we were all looking at that.
Was it under the impulse of Bill Carr, or was one of the teachers kind of taking the
Bill
forefront
Carr
of
had
it?
that solar house he was building out at Moggle somewhere, or he had built, that he was quite proud of.
Does that still exist?
I don't know.
And he took you to see that at the time, or the solar house?
We didn't go there. No, we just we might have seen a picture.
And do you remember, I think in 1967 at the time of the student conference, Richard Stringer organised an exhibit, a photograph exhibit of Queensland houses. Did you see that? Or
Oh, probably. Yeah.
do you remember something of it at all?
No, I don't particularly remember it, but I don't think it would have been anything startling to me, would it?
Well, when you said you left to make a film, was that the film that was Timber and Tin? Or was
No, that was Peter Cox's film, Surrender in Paradise.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
It was a feature film.
So, I've never seen that film. Is that in any way celebrate architecture?
No, not at all. No. No.
But the Gold Coast.
It ends up at the Gold Coast. Yeah. I don't think it's something Peter really wants to celebrate anymore. So. But it was, Don McAlpine shot it, so it looks beautiful.
Well, that would be a help, because a lot of the other films don't look beautiful.
It was, the rushes looked great, and when they turned the sound on, you thought, oh, who wrote this?
So when was that film made?
About 75.
And do you take part in it?
Oh, yes, a small part. I was supposed to be doing continuity, which I did, so that you make sure in the next frame they've still got the Band-Aid in the same place and everything.
Okay, well...
and costumes I was supposed to do too, but most people were encouraged to just find their own.
So just in the sequence of things, after Europe, after being in London, you were there 2 years, so that's what, 72
to 74.
Yeah, and then you come back here. You worked for Peddlethorpe, did you say?
I had
6 months?
hepatitis for 6 months, and then there was no work, and so it was
Oh, the hepatitis was following South America?
Bali, I
Bali.
think. Yeah.
On the way home.
Or maybe I got it in Spain. Something happened to me there that it could have been, but I don't know. Yes, so then I went to Peddlethorpe and Harvey, yes.
And what did you do there?
Look, I worked on that building with all the gold glass,
The AMP?
Yes, window details.
Well, that was a pretty memorable building at that time.
It
I mean, it was the
yeah.
building, really.
Yeah, and they were quite pleased with me.
Who was actually designing that building? Who took responsibility for it?
I don't know now. Oh, I can't even remember who I was directly working for. There was someone there called Graham Elwood, was there?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right, I remember. Peter Harvey
was there.
kind of the boss, but
Yeah.
did he take a role in design, or was it Graham Elwood?
I think it was Graham Elwood.
Yeah, I think so too. What did your father think of that building? I mean, he had been the architect for many of the tall buildings in the city that were good. I mean, he was a good architect. What did he think of the AMP, which was a very different sort of building? Curtain wall, no shading.
Well, I don't think he had an objection to it because, the last office of Henry and Crofts, or TVS was also a refractive glass thing in Henry Street, which I always thought Dad, but he liked that one.
Henry Street, where's that?
Is it Spring Hill or it's Spring Hill? Yeah.
Okay, well,
It's a 2-story and it's got black glass wall.
I don't know.
17 Henry Street, I think it is.
So your father was still practicing at this stage. When did he retire?
Well, he worked part-time 3 days a week until he was 75 in 1994. He worked as a consultant to TVS on, well, landscape architecture partly and other things.
What did he do in the other 2 days?
I don't know. He was a watercolourist of some note, and he did his Christmas cards, his beautiful pen and ink sketches.
But you worked in his office after you were at Peddlethorpe and Harvey.
I did. Yeah.
And that was on that building that you just mentioned, or was it on another?
Oh no, for Prenley and Crofts.
Yes.
It was pretty mundane actually, was it? And just across from me was, who's recently been the president of Queensland chapter? Ian, something? Anyway. What's his name? What did I do? I think I was working more for Dean Prangley, which I suppose is sensible. And that was pretty mundane, commercial warehouse stuff. But Dad was pleased with me, said I was conscientious.
That's all that matters.
in commercial warehousing. Yeah, anyway, then when Bob Martin said, come and do this National Trust thing, I thought, oh, that would be good.
Because Bob Martin worked there too, did he not?
At some time, yeah.
But not
Not
when
at
you were
that
there.
time, no.
And what was happening at the National Trust?
It was the townscape study of Ipswich that we did. So,
This is in the days of Peter Forrest.
yes,
Was Dick Allen there?
probably.
And
Yes.
Bob Moore?
Yes.
And the others? Was Meredith Walker there?
Not in close contact with me. She was a name, I think, but I don't know. She might have been in the background, yeah.
I mean, she came from Sydney. Well, she turned up about that time. And she was certainly here in 78.
Well, this was, I think, 77-ish, sometime like that.
So the National Trust was a kind of a good alternative to an architect's office because there was a lot of political stuff going on and there were battles to be fought and can you describe that time? I mean, you would have thought going to the Trust was just as good as working for your father.
Oh, it was better because, it was more interesting. For the sort of work that I could do at Prangley and Crofts, it was not very interesting. But they were doing interesting work, but it wasn't for me to do.
Was Don Cunnington still at Prangley and Crofts then? Or had he started his own business?
I think he had left, but I certainly remember the time when he was there. He was prominent there.
And Tom McCarroll also? Or
He wasn't there at that time, was he? I think they'd gone.
And at the time, you said when you were studying your final 3 years, you chose to go to Coleman and Gargett, or were there other firms that you would rather have did your internship at? Who were the firms that you were thinking were good in Brisbane at that time?
Oh, I think I tried to get to Jim Birrell, but I didn't get in.
Well, Jim Birrell was kind of the favoured office. He was doing the best work.
Yeah.
But then there were people like John Dalton also.
Yeah. I didn't try there, but he certainly was prominent, yes, and well thought of and did good houses.
And Caro Nutter and Charlton would be another desirable place to work.
Yes.
Ever try? Did you?
I suppose I followed what Dad was telling me. I did try Bob Froud,
Job and Plaat.
Yeah. Oh no, that was later, after I'd been at Conrad and Gargan. No, I didn't try them at that time.
There were women working at Conrad and Gargan. There was who were architects. There was Paquita.
She wasn't there.
She wasn't there?
No. I don't think there were any women architects when I was there.
No, I think all the women were doing other things.
Shirley, yes. And Beryl.
Shirley and Beryl. Yes.
What were they doing?
Shirley made the tea and did the printing.
The printing, yeah.
But she also answered the phone, and sometimes that was very important because she was there to answer the phone during lunchtime. Sometimes the important calls came through.
Okay. So after the National Trust, what did you want out to do? Was then the film?
After the National Trust. Oh, I went to Sydney for a year.
And you worked there as an architect?
No, I was doing this ceramic screen printing. I developed a method of doing, and that was quite absorbing, but after I'd worked out how to do it, I didn't do it anymore.
Was that at art school?
No, I didn't go to art school. Well, after I travelled in Spain and all these ceramic tiles were so beautiful, and I thought we've got a similar climate, we could have more of that decorative tiling, and I worked out how to get these ceramic inks, and I had a little kiln and a silk screen onto the tiles and fire them, and it took ages to get it working, and then I couldn't be bothered selling the things, so I thought I wanted to get back into the mainstream, so I'd kind of dropped out of mainstream architecture, so that's why I did the landscape diploma. I thought I'll get back in this way.
And did it work?
Yes, I suppose so. But then I did what I always do, and I chose a sort of way that wasn't, in fact, the mainstream. And I took a job. Well, when I was studying landscape, Vic Ferros was a lecturer there, and he saw this famous Ipswich townscape study, and so he offered me a job, and I took that. So I was a landscape planner, really, rather than a landscape architect. And in that practice there was also heritage reports to write, being a town planning practice. And I quite actually like the writing, and it was good. I was there. And it was very flexible because he kept sending me work even when I went to Townsville for 2 years, and then I came back and had another child, so I could just do it in my own time and go in there some days and not others, and it was good. And I think I did it well for what it was.
That sort of flexible work practice, which of course now is still a big issue in architectural practices, was that a common find, or was it unusual at that stage that you could sort of manage your work and family?
I think it was unusual, unless, if you'd married an architect and you had a joint practice, then you could do it, you see, but if you didn't, then you couldn't.
With the tiles, the ceramic decoration, I've seen some.
Oh, in Alison's.
In Alison's bathroom.
That's right. What are they the tea tree ones?
I can't remember, but I know they're there. And did you do other installations like that?
Well, I only did the tiles. People could use them how they liked.
But you didn't ever see where they finished up?
Not really, no. Well, I know my sister had some, things like that.
But I mean, she fixed them. They weren't
I
loose.
made some tables. I had some of them I put on tables.
Okay, so then at what stage do you get married?
About 1980, end of 1980.
Okay, so...
That was in Townsville.
Why were you in Townsville?
Rod was, he had a job that was partly lecturing in drama at the college and partly directing a season of theatre for the City Council. It was a two-way job. Mm.
So, did you, after you had
I
children...
worked in Townsville actually for
Oh.
Max and Robinson. It was terrible.
Tell us.
No. Mm.
Well, they're a commercial firm. I don't know
They're
very
very
much
good
about
at
them.
cyclone bolts.
So you learned about cyclone bolts. I guess I'd like to go back and ask you why you did architecture in the first place.
Well, just because I wanted to do something at university, and if I hadn't done that, I would have done arts, and I knew it was interesting. And
Yeah.
I thought I'll do that because it's interesting and
And was it-
absorbing and long.
Was it evident at the time, as a woman deciding to study architecture, because not many, or at the time you started more and more?
I went to a school where you were told you could do anything, you know, and you had to more or less do the best you could, you know, highest priority you could find. You know.
And did you find when you were studying architecture that there was a distinction made, that you were treated differently by the professors or by fellow students, or not really? It was
No, really. Not in any negative way.
or in a positive way?
No, I don't think so.
Have we covered it all? Surely not.
Well, no. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about your father's firm and some of the
Yes.
key works that you think
yes.
they produced.
Well, I know my father himself designed that, what was the Guardian Assurance Building, which is still at 380 Queen Street, and it's sandstone panels, and he was quite pleased with that, and I think it had some citation, but I don't think it was awarded anything. He was proud of the nurses' quarters at Mackay Base Hospital, which has been published in architecture magazines. I think that was in the early 50s. His own house won a meritorious award.
And you grew up in it,
Yes, I did.
so you would have known.
Yes,
Does it still exist?
yes. They've just built a big fence all around the front, so I don't know what it actually looks like, but I think it's pretty much the same.
And what is the address? Where is the house?
52 Gilder Street, Intrapilli. It doesn't look like anything. Just that in 1952, it was, you know, very simple and well planned, and not only did the air flow through, but you know the spaces flowed through, and it was a good design.
Mm-hmm.
Dean Prangley said that butterbox when
So what was Dean Prangley's idea of a house?
something with a bit more
Substance.
Yeah,
And where did
a few more tiles on the roof or something.
Where did your father study architecture? He studied in Brisbane, or he
He
studied
did,
elsewhere?
yes. He studied at QIT and or whatever it was called then, Central Technical College.
Mm-hmm.
CTs.
And then he went to the war and came back and finished it. He finished it here at UQ.
Can you remember the dates when your father studied?
Well, I actually have them on a file if you want me to check,
Okay.
in case you're asking me details. Tiny writing down.
Was Dean Prangley in his year? Is that how they met?
I don't think he was. Central Technical College, Diploma in Architecture 1941. University of Queensland, Diploma in Architecture 1946. After the war he did an upgrade. Queensland Institute of Technology, Graduate Diploma in Landscape 1970. Registered Architect 1945.
Okay.
So did he work for other firms in Brisbane before?
He worked for whatever was the State Works Housing Commission. What was it called? Yes, anyway, he did work there probably while he was studying, I'd say. What was it called?
The government.
Yeah, the government.
Yeah.
So you said nurses' quarters and his own house. Are there other projects of your father that stand out or that you remember?
Of my father himself, I don't know, except some houses. So, I mean, the Pearl Assurance building in Eagle Street was a prominent building. Their own office was in the Winchcombe Carson building, which was in Eagle Street.
Which is gone now.
Yes, yeah. Bank of New South Wales head office, Queen Street.
So that would have been done with another firm because the bank had its own architects.
Yes, Cook and Kerrison.
Cook and Kerrison, yes.
And Cook and Kerrison gave Prangney and Crofts a lot of that work because they couldn't handle it all.
So, I mean, Prangney and Crofts at that time were probably had the best reputation for doing high-rise buildings. And then probably they got eclipsed by Peddlethorpe's and Bly.
I don't remember there being any resentments or anything.
No, it was a different time. Wasn't it? But people were still competing for work in a sort of way through who they knew. But once you got a client, they tended to stay with you. There was a loyalty there, but that's all gone now.
And
Crest Hotel, first
Crest
stage.
Hotel, yes.
Yeah.
Now that's done in 2 parts, isn't it?
Yes, first stage is got here.
Oh.
And what do you think were the good buildings in Brisbane at the time you were studying architecture? Not the good architects, but the good buildings that were around.
The Wickham Terrace car park was well, the Jim Birrell buildings were the ones that we all liked.
Why did you like them?
Well, actually, I think Doug Mackay did it, and I don't know when it was, that agricultural science building, that brick one. I think that's lovely.
Hartley Teakle these days.
What's it called?
Hartley Teakle.
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, a lot of people worked on that, like
Did
Bruce
they?
Goodser and
Oh, did they?
Don. And,
I just somehow thought it was Doug Mackay. I don't know why.
well, he probably did.
Yeah.
But, Birrell had a very good office.
Yeah.
But then...
And Rex was there in New Guinea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rex, I think, got disenchanted with Birrell's office and went off to New Guinea, where he could, do his own thing.
For Birrell, or was it?
Well, he went off for not for Birrell, but for Goodsa Baker.
Oh, okay.
He did work up there for them, and then decided that really he could open a practice there, because there was so much work.
Did you ever have Birrell as a teacher here?
No, I don't think so. No.
He spoke at that conference as well, the student conference. Do you remember anything about that, or not particularly?
No, I don't really. I mean, I remember him.
And what did you think of Dalton?
Oh, he was good.
But you put him in a different category from Birrell, or you weren't as fond of his work?
Oh, no, I like it. It's much more rectilinear and straight-edged and clean-cut, isn't it? But I like it, yeah.
Well, I mean, Dalton had really a domestic practice, and many of the houses that he did have the same sort of elements. And it was a small practice, a one-person, well, two-person practice perhaps. Whereas Birrell had whole range of sort of public buildings, and they're all different. But they're all good. So
Well, I know one that isn't. Oh, it is quite good. We used to stay in a high-rise at Maroochydore that he designed, and actually it's very nicely planned. It's a terrible looking building.
which one's that?
Northcliffe.
And that would have been done later,
Yeah.
like when he was up the
Yeah.
Sunshine Coast. Yeah, well, certainly the quality of the work dropped off.
It is a workable plan. It's a nice design when you get inside the unit. At least you can't see it when you're inside.
You're talking about sort of Beryl and Dalton in sort of more formal terms, nice clean lines and good planning and things like that. Did you, as a student or even later, think of these terms in these buildings in terms of whether they were sort of a regional expression or?
Oh yeah, well I take that for granted.
So you just saw this as a regional practice?
Yeah.
And was there anything sort of, was it just for the fact that it was here that it was regional, or did you sort of see certain elements of these buildings as sort of?
Yeah, because you know the flow of inside outside and that sort of thing. When the verandas gave way to courtyards, it was the same. Only big bits of wooden glass sliding doors and that kind of thing.
Materials?
Timber.
But Beryl isn't much timber.
No, well, that's it. I like off-form concrete, and I like brick. If it's nice brick like that one. I like the brick on the conservatorium. I think it's great.
Wasn't Beryl's architecture considered more international at the time, or more influenced by international architecture? Or did you really see it as a regional rendition of international examples?
I didn't think of it as international particularly.
In Union College?
Oh yes.
Well, Union College compared to, say, some of the other colleges here, which were done by local firms.
Like?
I suppose International House.
Oh, Steve Trotter.
Yeah.
Women's College was Conrad and Gargett.
Yeah.
I didn't make that distinction.
Beryl's also trained as a Melbourne architect. Was there any of that sense about sort of grouping him with sort of the Melbourne modernists? Or? No? Okay.
Was ignorant of that.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, Bill Carter came from Melbourne too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was a tradition of Melbourne people coming here.
And people admired Roy Grounds, I think. Dad certainly did.
Did he know architects in other states?
He knew Sid Anker. He was a friend of his. He thought he was good.
Seidler?
Yes, he loved Seidler. I don't know that he knew him, but...
And do you think that he would have gone to Sydney and Melbourne to look at architecture?
He went to conventions. He met Gropius at the airport at the Sydney convention.
By accident?
Well, they were at the airport, and Gropius came up to him and said, "You look like an architect." Because he had suede shoes on or something and black glasses. How do we get to somewhere? He looked like Gropius.
That's classic.
So I guess we could work out what date that was from knowing when Gropius came, but I forgot.
He was quite an old man.
Did Gropius's visit make any impact, you think, on your father, besides the meeting at the airport?
Yes, I think so. But I don't know exactly.
But was Gropius an architect that your father admired before?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah? Did he talk about other international architects to you?
No.
No Frank Lloyd Wright or no?
Oh, you may be Frank Lloyd, but you're not always right. He said
That's lovely.
Did he ever go to the US?
no.
And so the things that were happening in California when he was building his own house, were they known to him, do you think? You know, the case study houses and...
I'm not sure, because I was only 3 or something, so I don't know.
Did your father kind of keep records of his own work in any way? Did he record what he did?
You mean keep the plans?
Well, plans or photographs or...
No. He's just got all these notes of things, you know, that are hard to read and all the buildings, but no.
There's no archive of Premier Crofts.
There is in the Friar, I think they took things there.
They have, okay.
So you mentioned town planning because you worked for Big Ferros. But you weren't a planner.
No.
But you were actually working as a planner in some sense. Heritage planner maybe, or
landscape planner, or
yeah.
you know, they come with a site and you sort of say, well, you can't build there, and you know, that's just...
But it's sort of master plan.
Yeah, but there were detailed landscape plans as well.
And the Ipswich study that you spoke of, townscape study, how...
wouldn't stand up very well now, but...
How was that organised? I mean, why did they do one? Who decided to do it?
Well, I suppose Peter Forrest did.
Oh, so it came from the trust.
Yeah.
An initiative from the trust to try and just catalogue what was in Ipswich.
Yes. Well, yes. Find areas, and we did sketches and descriptions of different areas. And
so you could have a conservation area that you could say this area
yes, we didn't
should be
designate.
protected.
We didn't designate what should be conserved. We just noted what was good that was there.
So how was that done? Was that by just driving around?
Yeah.
And
photographing, drawing, making notes. Yeah, on maps and.
But it was sort of visual rather than actually understanding the dates of things.
Yes, exactly.
When it all happened.
I've done things in Ipswich since with who's that Brisbane history group person? Man.
Rod Fisher.
Yes. And a couple of girls from the anthropology department, and we did it. It was terrible. It was codes for everything, and you had to say what code a house was by what roof it had or something. It was absolutely stupid. But anyway.
That's odd.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work done to try and quantify these things, but it really defies any logic. It's not useful.
No, it's not.
Was this an interesting time at the National Trust? I suppose maybe going back to Rob's question about some of the political battles that may have been going on. Do you have any memory of those?
I just had my head down doing the job.
Just trying to avoid those.
Well, Peter Forrest, I think, left in unsavoury circumstances, and he certainly made enemies, and partly I think that's because he was trying to exercise power perhaps that he didn't have. Do you have an opinion about him?
No, not at all. No.
I mean, he went on to do good things up in the Northern Territory, and he was very effective in being one of those people who put together the borough charter and started the whole thing on a better footing. So it was a good time for Brisbane to have him here, because we were a state without any legislation or protection, and you needed somebody in there who would fight for that cause, and he did it pretty effectively. And he attracted some good people like Dick Allen to come and help.
Yeah. How's Dick going?
Oh, he does a lot of sailing these days. But we have to talk to him yet.
It's on the list.
So did you just do Ipswich, or did you do any other projects for Brisbane for the National Trust?
I think I did. I don't know. I worked for the, what was it called? Was it the Environment and Heritage for a while? 6 months, I think, and then we went.
That was after 92, after there was an act.
No, it was before 92, because then in 92 I left and we went to New York for 6 months, so that was the end of that job.
Well, but it would have, the Department of the Environment really only started after
I don't know
the
what
Goss
it was
government.
called.
Mm-hmm.
It was 6 months, maybe in 1992.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's when I think the Goss government comes in 91, perhaps.
Right, yeah. It was the 6 months before May 1992.
And Rod Fisher would have been there?
No, he might have come in on committees, but I don't know that he was actually there in the rooms. Fiona was there.
So they essentially had to put together a list of things to protect.
Yes,
They
that's
took the
right.
National Trust list because a lot of work had already been done.
And they wrote citations.
Yeah. And well, it was all, they had an enormous task to do in a short time, and it was done as thoroughly as it later was done. So you were part of that. And working out of where?
Ann Street.
The MIM. We can't ask you who the significant architects who had worked in your office were.
No.
But you registered as an
No,
architect?
I'm not,
No.
no, because I didn't keep a logbook. You know, when I went to London, and I
Tried to wake them.
I didn't keep any records of anything, and then I came back and I was sick, and then I got other jobs. I just had those short 6 month jobs, and then I did something else, and so I never registered that.
But you worked for Vic Ferros for quite a few years.
On and off, about 20 years,
Yeah.
probably.
So you must have been pleased with what you could do.
Yes, he used to come down and say, "Take a bow, Lindy Wissler." And I think,
But what were you doing?
well, I was writing things and planning things. And arguments mainly. I think what I probably did best was writing arguments for or against things. And,
For court cases?
yes, or reports for something or other.
So he was engaged in getting permission to build things.
Yeah, or not.
And what did you think, if you didn't think they were any good, that how could you then still write things that would support them? Or did that never happen?
Well, you make it the best that you can, I suppose. You show how it can, the best way it can be done.
Vic Ferros had an interesting office up in Highgate Hill.
Yeah, Noel Robinson, John Hocking designed it.
Yeah.
John Hocking.
So, I mean, they were the sort of interesting town planners of the time, that they had an architectural office and they used interesting people to do it.
Graham Bly worked with Vic a bit too.
So, I mean, what did you think of that building, for instance?
The sun control was terrible on my desk. But yeah, I liked it.
I can't think of anything else.
Deborah?
I don't mind if sun control's terrible or if things leak or anything. There's other priorities. The space is nice. That'll do.
What about your own house? I mean, have you done things to your own house?
Yes, I have.
Well, describe it.
Well, it's a 1900 square ordinary thing they call Federation. You know, they call it.
A high-set wooden house.
It's only low at the front, but it's on a steep slope. It's high at the back. Yes. So, well, I've built another pavilion, another bedroom that links, and I built a room under at the back, which you can't see from the front, but it just fits in under nicely. And decks, swimming pool, beautiful swimming pool, very nice. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with it.
So that was done over a long period, or
About
did
every
you-
10 years I do something massive.
So how long have you been in that house?
About 30 years.
So you had 3 massive things. Just thinking back to the people who you went through with, who, I mean, there were people who went on to be architects and people who went on to do other things.
Yeah.
Who are the good architects?
Rex and Russell, Mainwaring, Don, and the people who went on to do. I mean, Max was good as a student, Max Banner, and he then went to London Film School and became an animator.
Yeah, we talked to him.
Yeah.
But
Tony was quite good as a student, Tony Rose, and he still practices as an architect. Well, he lives in northern New South Wales, but he's been doing housing up in North Queensland, where he used to live, sort of community housing or something.
I mean, people like Gavin Patterson went and started a practice up in High Alba, or Maryborough.
Yeah, Gavin. I was never really familiar with the work he did, but he's certainly a prominent person.
Well, people like John Railton were highly regarded, I think, by that group.
Yes.
Do you have any
Yes, highly regarded.
memory?
I remember a house.
Which house?
I can't remember the Railton house.
His own?
Yeah.
In Spring Hill?
Yeah.
Which was, I think, where his office was, underneath it. And,
The terrace house.
no, he did the parents' house first, but his own house in Spring Hill
Yeah.
was where his office was.
The terrace house.
The terrace house.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said parents' house.
Has anyone mentioned Pat Moroney? I can remember him coming in tutoring us when we were studying.
No, he stopped being an architect at some point.
Did he?
Became a sculptor,
Ah.
as far as I remember. But I can remember going to his house out at Chelmer, or that side of the river anyway, which was beautiful. I've been very impressed with him.
I still remember one thing he did in the studio. He said, now I want you to just do scribble patterns, and he put on this Thelonious Monk music, and we were just sort of
Well, I mean, that's probably one of the best things that you remember about the course, isn't it?
No, I just remember it because it was funny. But I quite enjoyed it, yes.
But as a teacher, he was good.
He was good, yeah.
Yeah.
And another person that was prominent around it was Morris Hurst. Has he come up?
Yeah. So what did you know about him?
He had a house at Kenmore somewhere where we went to have a look at.
A house that he designed,
Yeah.
not a house that he lived in.
He took you to the house, or
Yes, I think so. Or someone did, Bill Carr maybe. I don't know.
But well, Morris had come from Britain, as had Dalton. So they were, there's the Melbourne people coming in, there's the British people coming in, there's Karl Langer coming in, but the homegrown ones, like your father, were, I mean, they didn't disagree with these people, they just absorbed their ideas.
Yeah. They were stimulated by it.
What did your father think of the shift in architectural education that was happening? The fact that the UQ was going across to a degree program, and Did he have any opinions about that or
I
the
think
change?
he always favoured employing QIT students.
Okay.
They were more useful.
But was he sort of conscious of the what was being taught? Did he show an interest in what you were learning here at the...
Yes, yes.
And have any opinion or express any opinion
I think
about
he
that?
thought some of it was a bit impractical, but he wasn't against it. But he did favour employing people, say, at QIT.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I think all employers found them to be useful because they had that extra few years of
the real
experience.
world.
Yeah.
Mm.
Were there any buildings that your father didn't like?
No, I can't think of him expressing that.
I mean, there were some dreadful things happening at the time he was practicing.
Yeah. Oh, I think there were some things that they actually did in the office, like a house for some matron on the Gold Coast that Dean Prangley did that was like a gingerbread house in some way. Anything too ornate and fancy he didn't like.
Well, he was a modernist.
Yes, he was.
And Dean Prangley?
Dean's role was to be in lots of clubs and get jobs. Yeah.
That was because the way throughout the interview you've on several occasions kind of said that they didn't disagree on architecture because he called your house, your father's house, a buttercup? Buttercup, something like that. And how did they actually
that was
make a partnership?
in a fond kind of way, But Dean was a very friendly, good-humoured person.
So it was a good partnership.
Yeah,
Because they were kind of reciprocal
Mm.
partners.
Yeah.
Who were the other senior people there in
I
your
put in
memory?
a plug for Cliff Walsh because he was there very early on and he was a very good designer, but he didn't make partner like Eric Parrots and Peter Dowling did because he had an alcohol problem. And I can remember when that happened and Cliff Walsh came out to our place and he and Dave went out on the balcony in the dark and I thought, like, what is happening? But later I found out that Cliff wanted to know why he didn't get a partnership and Dad had to tell him that, couldn't give it to him. Then I think he left and went to Rockhampton or something. But he was a good designer.
As was your father.
Mm.
And I mean, that house at Gilbert Street won some award somewhere, or got published anyway.
Yeah, it won a medal for meritorious architecture, yes.
And I mean, that street had a few other architects in it. Jack
Cole
Parkinson.
Jessup Jack Parkinson and Cole Jessup were next door.
And did they have notable houses too?
I liked the Jessup's house. It was a huge gully of a thing of the land, and they Cole built on a knoll just looking northeast up the river. It was beautiful. And the house, it was a brickish house and the sliding doors were aluminium framed, so it was different from our place, but it kind of stepped back up the slope in little nooky things. It was different from ours, but I liked it.
Then there was Burley Just in that same street.
No, Burley
Right?
didn't. No.
Was that-
Burley lived at Camp Hill.
Oh, well, why am I confusing her with somebody else? Was it
Nicky
Julie?
Yak. I don't know who, Bob.
Well, forget that.
Burley was a good friend of my parents. Burley and Arnold were good friends.
Yeah, well, I can remember they were regulars at the Johnson Gallery openings, your parents, and they collected art, and that was a kind of social.
That was good, wasn't it? Sunday mornings there.
Yeah. Sunday mornings, the gallery had a beautiful courtyard garden, and they served wine, and you could walk around, look at nice
Buy
pictures.
things,
Doesn't the Johnson Gallery also do architectural exhibitions? Is that correct?
Don't remember that.
I don't think so.
No?
a lot of the people who went there would have been architects, and certainly Gertie Langer was part of that scene. And, but they were the best, I think, exhibiting gallery, and they had all the good painters at the time. But, so your father's production of watercolours, I've seen some of them. I mean, are there hundreds or just?
There's hundreds. The pen and ink sketches, I think, are superior.
Did he ever exhibit them?
No.
I see Bruce Buchanan is doing it these days, having
Is he?
exhibitions.
Mm.
He's quite a good watercolourist.
Oh, good.
I can't, I've run out of things to ask you.
That's all right. I'll go home now.
Thank you for the interview.
I will think of more.